Hi, and welcome to this video tutorial. My name is Daniel and I'm an anaesthetic fellow based in Melbourne. Today I'm going to take you through the basics of an anaesthetic machine check. I will demonstrate the key steps involved in checking an anaesthetic machine, using guidelines based on the Anaesthetic Association of Great Britain and Ireland. As you can see, these guidelines are in the form of a checklist, which can be particularly useful the first few times you check a machine yourself. The checklist can be downloaded from this link, and the full article is given below. Now, as the AAGBI checklist is designed to be used for checking all types of anaesthetic machines, I follow a slightly different order to make things more efficient for this particular machine. You can access a template for my machine check from the link below. However, some of the components have been deliberately left blank so that you can fill them in yourself while you watch my demonstration. After this tutorial, you will also be able to recognise key equipment required for ventilation and airway management. Perhaps most importantly, we will also cover the essential backup components of the anaesthetic machine check. Now, I want you to imagine for a moment that you could only use 3 pieces of equipment to manage someone's airway and breathing. What would you choose? Maybe think back to past advanced life support courses you might have done. Essentially, with your backup equipment, you have to be able to clear a patient's airway, achieve oxygenation, and also assist their ventilation. Now, I'm not going to tell you my answer, but watch closely, because in the next clip you'll see me start the machine check by ensuring that all the essential backup equipment is present first. Always start by checking that you have a self-inflating bag available. Fully expand the bag and check that you can generate pressure. Then check that you have a backup oxygen supply that is close to full. Check visual indicators, but also make sure that you know how to turn it on and that oxygen actually comes out. Suction is the last key backup item to check at this stage. Check that you can hear the suction and it has enough pressure to hold its own weight when suspended about 1 metre from the ground. Also check that you have enough length to be able to reach your patient. First, turn the machine on to start running the self-check. While the machine boots up, it's a good idea to check that the power cable is plugged into the correct outlet. As the machine startup can take some time, it's also a good chance to turn on other monitoring and also think about other equipment and medications you might need. Once the monitors get to their home pages, it's time to start the specific checks. The home screen has the machine check option already selected in the top left. All you need to do is push the main green button to bring up the next menu. The machine tells you a few things to do before selecting Start. Go around to the side of the machine and remove the flow sensors before putting them back in. This resets the sensors and zeroes them to atmospheric pressure. Then make sure that this switch is turned towards the right. This allows the machine to do an automatic check of the ventilator circuit once you've pressed the green button. As the machine runs through its automatic checking processes, it can be a good time to anticipate the next steps and get the next pieces of equipment ready. The machine then asks you to occlude the patient Y-piece before confirming the next step. This is done by using the stopper shown on the side of the machine. The next step in the automatic check can then be confirmed. This part of the self-check takes the machine about 5 minutes, so fast forward it. As this part of the check almost comes to an end, you can see all the things the machine has checked. And if you watch closely, you can see it doing its final checks of oxygen levels and also nitrous levels. Once the automatic breathing system check is done, the machine prompts you to get ready for the automatic circuit check. Set the bag vent switch to the left and adjust the APL valve to between 30 and 70. Once you confirm Start with the green control knob, the machine begins its final automatic check. Once this is complete, the machine displays a final checklist of reminders to do next. Following the AAGBI guidelines, the next things to check is that the power supply is plugged in and switched on. This might seem like a redundant step, but actually the machine can run purely on its own battery supply, only to run flat when you least expect. It's also important to check that the gas pipelines are firmly and correctly attached. We will cover checking the oxygen supply later in more detail. After the automatic checks, check the breathing circuit yourself by selecting Start Case and then confirming Start Case Now. This means the machine will start to add fresh gas flow to the circuit. Here I'm selecting 5 litres a minute. Connect a second 2 litre bag to the circuit to perform the 2-bag test. Fill the bags using the oxygen flush at the front of the machine. With the flow still at 5 litres, ventilate manually by squeezing the bags and check that the unidirectional valves are opening and closing in sequence. Next, check that the vaporizer has an adequate volatile level and is firmly and correctly positioned and locked in. It's also important not to forget the soda lime. This is used to absorb all the carbon dioxide in the circuit, but only works if it is fresh. Soda lime turns purple when it needs to be replaced due to an added indicator dye. Make sure it is correctly reinserted because even small gaps can cause a leak. Flick the switch to select the ventilator mode and check that the bellows move and the bag inflates. This has all been done with the fresh gas flow still set at 5 litres per minute, and so far there have been no leaks, and adequate tidal volumes and pressures have been achieved. To increase the ability to detect any leaks, drop the flow rate to only 0.5 litres a minute. Now check to see that adequate volumes are still achieved and that the bag doesn't slowly deflate. Check that adequate pressures are still being achieved and keep the ventilator running to give time for any small leaks to empty the bag. While ventilation continues, test the hypoxic alarm by disconnecting the oxygen supply from the wall. Once disconnected, check that the machine has both an audible and visual alarm. Here you can see the machine has detected that both wall and cylinder oxygen supplies are 0. Check that the cylinder at the back of the machine can be turned on to supply backup oxygen to the machine itself. You can now accurately check the oxygen content of the backup cylinder by checking this pressure displayed on the gauge below. Cylinder pressure should be around 10 to 15,000 kilopascals. Note that the nozzle symbol indicates that wall pressure is still 0. You need to fix this by reconnecting the oxygen supply from the wall. The inside of the connector has a specifically sized metal disc that will only fit onto the oxygen wall supply. This feature, along with the colour coding, ensures that no gases are mixed up. Now you need to ensure that the backup cylinder is firmly turned off so that it doesn't empty out due to any small leaks during the case. One of the final checks is to ensure that scavenging is connected and turned on. This is a continual amount of suction that takes away any waste gases from the anaesthetic machine. Now that the machine is ready, check that your gas monitoring is working by blowing on the CO2 sample line and waiting for the capnograph waveform to respond. Now test the oxygen analyzer. Note on the bottom right hand corner of the screen that the FiO2 is 21%. This is correct for room air, and the oxygen flush button should bring that up to 100. While you can manage a patient's airway just with face mask ventilation and proper positioning alone, this is usually only a temporary measure, and intubation is required for full control. Check you have 2 working laryngoscopes and test the switch integrity by pushing up against your hand. Check you have a full set of airway adjuncts including oropharyngeal and nasopharyngeal airways. Make sure you have a selection of endotracheal tubes available, including a size below what you are planning to use. A stellette can be useful for guiding the tube around difficult corners, and an LMA is a useful alternative airway. You may recall that clearing a patient's airway is one of the key priorities in any emergency, and McGill's forceps can be used to remove visible foreign bodies, such as teeth or food, while fine-bore suction catheters may be more useful for secretions or blood. Last, but by no means least, the bougie is an essential piece of kit that must be present before starting any intubation, as it can help guide the tube through the cords. We have covered a systematic approach to checking the anaesthetic machine using guidelines provided by the AAGBI. We have described general airway equipment needed for every anaesthetic case and covered essential backup equipment that needs to be checked before any anaesthetic to ensure you can meet the key goals of clearing the patient's airway, delivering oxygen and assisting ventilation. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it useful, and here are the key references used if you would like to read further.